no risk it, no biscuit.
Coming from the Arizona desert, presented by SBNation.com. For Arizona Cardinals fans, by Arizona Cardinals fans, with outsider and insider's perspectives, this is Revenge of the Birds. Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans. This is Jess Root, and this is Revenge of the Birds Radio, and we are glad to have you listening to us via download podcast. We have for you tonight, for today, whenever you're listening, this is Jess Root as always, and on the line with me is Seth Cox. How are you doing today, Seth?
Healthier than the Cardinals.
Yes, you could probably say that about almost anyone at this point. Yeah, that we're going to talk about that. Is Revenge of the Birds Radio is brought to you by Audible.com, the internet's leading audio content provider. Visit Audible.com. Take a look at what they have for you to listen. They've got audiobooks, they've got podcasts, they've got all sorts of audio content. And for Revenge of the Birds Radio listeners, there is a special deal that we have for you. If you go to audibletrial.com/Revenge of the Birds, you can get yourself a month free of the service, a test run, and free audiobook download. Do it. You won't regret it. It's a great provider. It's a great service. And get yourself that free audiobook download. That is audibletrial.com/Revenge of the Birds. And, well, Seth and I are going to be talking this game today about the unfortunate Arizona Cardinals game this past Sunday, in which they lost to the Denver Broncos 41-20, and not only lost the game, but lost, it seemed, half their team to injuries. It was their first loss of the year. They did so with Drew Stanton starting at quarterback. However, he was among the walking wounded as he left the game with a concussion. Rookie Logan Thomas had to enter the game. The Cardinals end up in the game losing 41-20. They were within 4 at one point. Logan Thomas threw a touchdown pass and it pulled them within 4 at 24-20, and that was about it. Things sort of fell apart from that point on. They're now 3-1. They still sit atop the NFC West at the moment. Seattle also at 3-1, though technically Arizona does have a slight edge as they have one division win in the season. But before we're going to start, we're going to talk about a few things. Let's go kind of through some of the news that we have, and that includes the injuries. It's a long list. I happened to be at the press conference on Monday to be there for the news, and it was devastating almost. The most prominent injury that there was actually didn't turn out to be an injury that anyone really knew about at the time, and that was Matt Shaughnessy. Starting outside linebacker Matt Shaughnessy now been placed on injured reserve, designated return list. He suffered a knee injury, something with his cartilage. He will be out 6 weeks and will be able to return for the final 4 games. Calais Campbell was injured during the game on a chop block penalty that Julius Thomas put on him. He has a medial collateral ligament strain and will miss 1 to 3 weeks. Very, very actually very lucky it wasn't worse. Justin Bethel suffered an AC sprain in his shoulder. Not expected to miss any time. Patrick Peterson sprained his ankle, but it's a lower ankle sprain that he'd probably be good to go. Troy Nicholas, tight end rookie Troy Nicholas, suffered a high ankle sprain. He's day-to-day. We'll see what happens with that. Who else is there? Dave Zasil, the punter, re-aggravated his groin injury and was placed on Tuesday on season-ending injured reserve. Drew Stanton suffered a concussion. He is still in the air. He has to go through the protocol before he can take the neurological test. He is uncertain and his status for Sunday. Carson Palmer had good news over the weekend where apparently he got his shoulder nerve to wake up. He did some throwing on Sunday. He had no adverse effects. He had no setbacks, and so it's possible he can practice Thursday and Friday. meaning he is possibly can start again for the Cardinals at home on Sunday against the Washington Redskins. And let's see who else was on that injury list. Let me see. Trying to go off the top of my head. The wide receivers were okay. The offensive line was okay. But yeah, that was pretty devastating there for the Cardinals that game. The Cardinals made some roster moves, consequently, as they placed Zassadil on injured reserve and Matt Shaughnessy on injured reserve, but designated to return. They brought back linebacker Marcus Bernard. Was he with the team seasons ago? He was with the team in training camp, was one of the final cuts. Then brought back when John Abraham left the team to contemplate his future. Then cut again when Abraham came back, only to have Abraham suffer concussion that would end his season. They promoted punter Drew Butler, who punted the first 3 games of the season. He was on the practice squad. He's been promoted to the active roster. And to replace Butler's spot on the practice squad, they signed Dennis Dixon, former Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback, former Oregon standout, to the practice squad, kind of as insurance, because there is definitely the possibility that neither Drew Stanton nor Carson Palmer will be available for Sunday's game, which would mean Logan Thomas will get his first NFL start, and then they wouldn't have anything to back him up. And so that's why they brought in Dixon. Has experience with Bruce Arians, was under him in Pittsburgh when Arians was offensive coordinator, and it gives them at least somebody who knows kind of what he's doing with the offense should something happen to Thomas, if he has to be the guy to start. So, how depressing is that, Seth, just to listen to all that?
It's sad. I mean, it's a wake-up call of how fickle the NFL is. You have high aspirations. You're 3-0 with, basically your backup quarterback being, the catalyst to that 3-0 start, and then it just everything implodes, and now you're wondering, okay, when are these guys going to be healthy? When are they going to get back and do? I mean, as we'll talk about later, but does this change the outlook for the entire season? And that, I think that in week 5 is just kind of devastating.
And it's almost to the point where we'll talk about this a little bit more, but it seems like really, again, more on the defensive side of the ball. How much more could they possibly lose and kind of just have the wheels fall off? Because so far, the wheels haven't fallen off. Outside of what happened in the fourth quarter against Denver. The wheels sort of came off there. But how much could they actually lose and still be considered a contending team? Well, we're going to talk about other topics. Listeners, we're going to be talking about Julius Thomas play. It's been big news throughout the league. It's been the Bruce Arians has made a lot of noise about it. The result of the play, and so on and so forth. We're going to talk about the injuries and how significant can the defense hold up. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly that there came from that Denver game. We're going to look at the possibility of Logan Thomas at quarterback. We're going to look at what he did, and we're going to talk about how he did in Denver and the prospects of him winning with, if the Cardinals winning with Logan Thomas at quarterback against the Washington Redskins. And lastly, we'll talk about, is it time to change expectations? If Palmer comes back, are we back on track? If Palmer can't come back right away, do we need to think differently? We're going to bring up that 2012 season. Not to say that we're going to see the wheels fall off like we did and turn into a dumpster fire, but there's a lot to look at in terms of the 2012 season and what's happening right now. And is it necessarily an overreaction or not? So let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about Julius Thomas. Bruce Arians, very, very adamant about that. Said it was the dirtiest play he'd ever seen in 37 years of football right after the game. On Monday, when at the press conference, after he had a night to think it over, look it on film, it didn't back down at all. He says, you can't convince me it wasn't deliberate. Larry Foote had used words like sickening, disgusting, even suggested, I said, I don't want to play the game, but then he did play the game, and suggest perhaps that the Broncos were coaching that coming from the sideline. So yeah, really, is any of this sour grapes, or in your opinion, Seth, with this, how dirty was the play? Was it dirty, unfortunate? Was it just stupid on Julius Thomas' part? Because I've heard all sorts of. Was it really a miscommunication? Can we say that it was malicious? Should we even go there and talk about whether or not Denver is coming from Denver's sidelines? Or is it just sour grapes on the part of the Cardinals and just trying to make some noise and hopefully get a greater penalty for Thomas, who, according to Mike Jurecki, he tweeted out on Tuesday that the league is only going to fine Thomas the $8,200 or somewhat, I think $8,268 that goes along with that chop block penalty, will not be suspended. In the meantime, the Cardinals are without their defensive captain for 1 to 3 weeks. What's your take on all that?
It starts with, I think it was just like a dumb play by Thomas. You're taught when you cut block, you come at somebody from the head on. You don't come at them from the side, because that's, you risk losing a knee like we saw there. I think you can tell by Ryan Clady's reaction.
He knew, crap. That's the reaction you saw on film.
Yeah. You could see on the, on every GIF that you see of the play, and everybody talking about, is it dirty, is it not? Ryan Clady's reaction is, crap, what just happened? Like, that's not what we called. At that point, I think it's either you speculate that was Julius Thomas just being dumb, or you speculate that Julius Thomas was told by somebody to do that. I mean, those are the two things. But I think by Ryan Clady's reaction, you can see that he was surprised and not prepared for Julius Thomas to, make a block like that, because he thought he had a pass set on a deep pass play against Calais Campbell, and all of a sudden Campbell's on the ground because his teammate just took out a knee. I think that's where you kind of ended. I think Arians is not in terms of sour grapes. I think he has every right to be pissed off. I think it's just typical Arians hyperbole. In terms of dirtiness of the play in the scope of 37 years of history, I mean, we've seen, Ndamukong Suh in the past 4 years, kick a guy in the groin while he was on the ground. You can't tell me that that's not dirtier than, it's a football play that was a stupid football play by Julius Thomas, whereas Ndamukong Suh was doing something that's not even a football play. Who is the center for the Cowboys that kicked a guy in the face when his helmet was off? Those are intentional dirty plays. I think this was a dirty play within the game that is a play that happens all the time, and it just unfortunately happened. It was done incorrectly by Julius Thomas, so he's either really dumb, like I said, or he was told by somebody. That it bothers me to speculate on something like that, because we have no idea if the Broncos would teach that. But then at that point, you're just saying that Julius Thomas is really dumb and doesn't understand how to cut block somebody.
And there's, it's fishy either way. I hate to talk to intent. I hate to speak to that, since obviously we can't see the intent, but what you can see is clearly Thomas was going for Calais Campbell's knee. His kind of explanation, there was a miscommunication, which would kind of be understood. Larry Foote said in the locker room, among kind of the diatribe he went on, he said when he was fussing at him a bit, Thomas told him that he thought it was a run play. Foote's reaction to that is like, how do you think it's going to be a run play when you do it and then you get up and run a pass route? So either, it's either Thomas is, and Denver Broncos fans, the Mile High Report, our sister blog, our sister site for Denver Broncos at SB Nation, one of their biggest explanations is Julius Thomas is a terrible blocker. That, though, doesn't excuse that sort of play. whether it was intentional or not, it is bad. It is dirty. It is a dirty play. He should have known at least. I mean, it was either just utterly stupid, or he caught everyone by surprise. You could tell that the left tackle had no idea that was coming, and when Campbell went down, he went from I'm going to engage to, oh boy, he didn't know what to do.
Yeah, and I talked to a couple people that are up in Denver, and they said that from what they heard from a couple people with the team was that I guess Thomas got chewed out by Clady in the huddle after the play was over. Maybe it was a chew out of, wow, you just cost us a touchdown.
That might have been it. I mean, it did cost them a touchdown.
Yeah, but I mean, they said that Clady kind of went at Thomas after the play, and so again, we're speculating. We don't know what was said in there, but was it something to the effect of you cost such a touchdown, or was it something to the effect that you don't do that? I mean, if you're going to cut block somebody, you come at them from straight ahead. You chop them down. You don't shoot for one leg on the outside of a leg. You shoot down towards their legs, at the shins, both legs, make it apparent that that's what you're doing. You don't come at somebody from the side to the outside of their knee. So, I mean, it's all speculation. It was a dirty play that happens all the time. And it was just, like I said, it was done incorrectly, which makes it dirtier. And really, in reality, it just makes Julius Thomas look dumb. Like, he doesn't understand the basics of a cut block and how to properly cut block somebody without hurting somebody. And they may be right at Mile High Report. I mean, he hasn't played football for too long, so it's not like he's an athlete first and a football player second. Still, that maybe they're right. Maybe he just sucks at blocking, and that was his attempt at a cut block, and it ends up costing the Cardinals their best defensive player.
That could be it. That's actually a good point about that. If he hasn't played football as long, because that's a block that's been illegal for a long time. I hope for Thomas' sake, for football's sake, that Thomas's teammates did look at him funny and kind of set him right, and not go with the route. Hey, dude, you cost us a touchdown. You cost this guy almost his career. At the same time, I think both BA and Flair, I think it was kind of the message to the team. I think it was a message to the team. I think the idea was BA was upset at it's a terrible play that it cost their best defensive player weeks. And I think in the end, rather than what the outrage is intended for, was to make enough noise to try and place some pressure on the league to do something more than the cheap fine that Thomas ultimately reportedly has gotten. Especially if you look at the context of, I saw it on internet boards all over the place, but Brandon Marshall, when he wore the wrong shoes, when he wore those green shoes that were not allowed, he was fined, $10,000 for a uniform violation, and Thomas is getting fined, a little over $8,000 for a bad football play, a career-threatening football play, a dirty play. Even if it wasn't complete intentional, it's still dirty. It just was not necessarily a malicious play. It was a stupid play, and it's the type of thing. It's the type of thing, of course, that you just can't have in football. But I think it was a deliberate diatribe. I think it was deliberately motivated to try and create a greater punishment than what there already was.
Right, and I think at that point, it just you have to look at what it is in terms of how the league has always done it, and just realize that maybe this will be a situation where they come out and change the rule, but the rules are in place. I mean, it's just like anything else. It's like when people get in an uproar about another failed drug test. Well, the rules were there already. We knew what would happen. So It's a tough break, and it sucks that there won't be a bigger penalty for Julius Thomas outside of $8,500, but it is what it is, and that's how the NFL set it up, unfortunately.
Well, let's enough of that whole play, because all it does is make people angry, and people whine and complain and either defend one or blame the other and start talking about. Although Larry Foote did bring up, you have to look. It's interesting the way the NFL players do this. They say, I don't want to play this game, or I don't want to talk bad about X, but then they does it because he said, I don't want to play that game, but maybe someone's got to be coaching on the side. He says, then you look at the Wes Welker play during the playoffs, who, when on that pick play, Welker took out Aqib Talib, who ends up being his teammate this year. Bill Belichick had almost an identical response reaction to that play post game as Bruce Arians did this last Sunday. But let's move on from that. Let's talk about, well, nothing really any more positive, but the injuries. So they lose Dave Zaster, they lose Matt Shaughnessy, significant time. We lose Calais Campbell for a few weeks. Troy Nicholas, who knows how long he'll be out. Patrick Peterson left the game. They were really kind of in the bind at the defensive back. And they're still kind of a bind at linebacker simply because, oh my goodness, they really don't have anyone who can produce at any sort of level. So how significant, you lose Calais Campbell for 1 to 3 weeks. And we saw what happened the second he left the game. All of a sudden, the Denver game plan, whether it was intentionally that way or it was just taking the chance at an opportunity, Calais out, let's run the ball that way. They gained, after Calais' injury, 90 of their 96 yards or whatever that they had during the game after Calais left the game. Matt Shaughnessy is injured, so they lose one of the best run-stopping linebackers in the game and really one of the key cogs to their number one defense from a year ago. And replace him with Alex Okafor, who will start. You'll see Kareem Martin in the mix. You'll see Sam Acho in the mix, and maybe now Thomas Kaiser a little more. He was inactive this last week. How significant is it going to be, particularly those losses to Shaughnessy and Campbell? Is this defense going to be anything like the defense that we saw earlier this year?
Well, we'll start with the defensive line, and I think and we can even throw Shaughnessy in there because he's a linebacker by name only. He doesn't really do much in terms of linebackerish stuff in rushing the passer or dropping into coverage. He's there to play great run defense, and that's what he does every week. And losing him and Campbell that's a huge blow. You look at what this team did just in this week, and you kind of open the show with it a little bit. They got toasted once Campbell left the game. I think you said it, 92 yards rushing given up on the game. I had it at 84 because I didn't count the two Peyton kneel downs after Calais Campbell got injured, including I think it was 32 on 4 carries right after he left the game. Literally the next, I think of the 10 plays they ran the ball 4 times, and it was 32 yards rushing. It was cake. I mean, as soon as they left the game, they saw that and they targeted it and they exposed it. It was it's what we have to worry about now at this point in terms of this defensive unit, because you've lost your clear leader on the defense in terms of heart and soul, in terms of Darnell Dockett, and now you've lost the best player on probably your team at this point, in Calais Campbell. And now, what can you do? There's really nothing. There's nothing in terms of the roster. And I know this is just a huge downer. But there's nothing in terms of the roster that they have right now that you can put in for Calais Campbell and go, oh, we shouldn't miss a beat. This isn't Darnell Dockett. This isn't, in my opinion, this isn't even Carson Palmer to Drew Stanton. This is Carson Palmer to like a Logan Thomas or John Skelton type move, where you have really,
someone who can play at a high level in the league to someone who, well, particularly that side, it's a body.
You're just hoping. Yeah. And that's the thing is, Campbell never left the field. He was out there almost every snap of every game, and I think his defensive snap count before this game, he was at like 94% of the snaps played. He's an Iron Man, and this is just an unfortunate thing that happened, and now they have to hope to find somebody to kind of replace him. The one thing I'll say is they can get away on rundowns if Alameda Teamu is healthy and they feel like he or Dan Williams can kind of play that right defensive end position from a pure run stopping point of view. That's all you can really hope for. But you're going to have Kareem Martin and Sam Acho as your outside linebackers over there, with a rotation of Tommy Kelly and Frosty Rucker. Maybe one of the nose tackles are going to slide over, and probably Ed Stinson a little bit. You're all of a sudden, what was one of the strengths of your team, now you're saying, okay, how are we going to fill this gap?
It's surviving. They have to just survive for the next 3 weeks and to hope, which luckily, now on paper, the record looks terrible, but Washington isn't a terrible team in terms of, you look at what they can do, because they played well defensively. They do things where they can run the ball exceptionally well with Alfred Morris. So it's not like that's a cakewalk. Oakland, yes, that's a dumpster fire. So they do have an easier part of the schedule in the next couple of weeks. And hopefully Calais can come back after that. But yeah, that defensive line is suddenly, well, the number. Look who's left from last year. At the end of the starters from last year, the only starter left from that front seven is Dan Williams, and he's the guy that played the least out of that group because he was splitting time with Alameda Teamu, and so he was maybe getting 15 snaps a game.
Yeah, and that's just the reality of the situation. You hit the nail on the head with this Washington game, as if you get somebody from a burgundy and gold, then they'll spell it out. And, Cardinals fans can guffaw or scoff at this, but they run the ball really, really well. That's what they do well. And, they're going to come in and they're going to pound the ball. And so we'll have to see if the Cardinals, because like I said, as soon as Campbell left the game with the injury, it was night and day in terms of ability. So, you're talking about a huge difference, and them having to find a way to, to fill that need. And then you look at Shaughnessy. One of the things that was interesting before the season started, I think I texted you this. I'm pretty sure I texted you this. But I texted you, and I said I got a text from a buddy who works and is a scout, and said that he thought this Cardinals linebacker group is, did I say the worst or one of the worst in the NFL? And that's what he texted me, and I texted to you, and I said, maybe you and I have rose-colored glasses, but I don't see that. And from
well, in terms of linebackers type things, what do you expect from your linebackers? You expect tackles and you expect sacks. They haven't gotten a single sack.
No, and you look at the team, and it's hard to do, objectively, because you and I are fans on top of trying to break these things down, but their linebackers haven't, if you go to somewhere like Pro Football Focus, their linebackers have not graded out well. There's just no two ways about it. Shaughnessy's been their best linebacker that's played a ton. Kevin Minter, he's playing in 33% of the snaps. He's playing well in those 33% of the snaps, but he's not even out there. He's basically out there a third of the time. The guys that are playing aren't playing well, and like you said, they don't get any pressure from that group. So it was a very not great group to begin with, and now you're talking about losing the guy that's been your unquestioned best player from that group so far in Matt Shaughnessy. So now the question is, how does that kind of, do you replace that? And like I said, it's going to be, I think, a combo of Acho and Okafor and Alexander, and hope that one of those guys works out the best. Okafor, 10 snaps, he wasn't abhorred at anything, but it is also really hard to tell off of 10 snaps what a guy could do. We're talking about Thomas Kaiser after game one and his 14 snaps, and then all of a sudden he got 50 whatever snaps in game two.
And was bad.
Yeah, and then is inactive by game four because of how, not effective he's been. So it is a situation, like you said, I think if you're going to have this happen, and obviously Shaughnessy's out for 8 weeks, but if you're going to have this happen, I don't think you could have drawn up a better time in the schedule to have Calais Campbell get injured like that than right now, because hopefully it's I would say 2 weeks. Like, leave him out the Oakland game. If you can't beat Oakland, then you're and this is all barring, a healthy quarterback situation. But if you can't beat Oakland, you're probably not you're not as good as you thought.
You're a bad team.
Yeah.
You're a bad team if you can't beat Oakland. Granted, it is in Oakland, so it's a little bit different. So if you're rolling Logan Thomas out there in Oakland, you're not looking at a good season anyway.
Exactly. So, that's just how I feel about it. So we'll see what happens. But I would hold him out, obviously, Washington, and I would just keep him out in Oakland and hope he can be ready for Philly. I think that's the next game after that. And because, they're struggling to run the ball. So, hopefully he can come back and just play on some passing downs.
Yeah. Yeah. And look at the possibilities they're going to have. Luckily the Cardinals had really good depth to start the year on the defensive line. Then they lost Darnell Dockett. Now they lost Campbell. Unfortunately, in terms of what those guys that they have on the line can do, none of them really do what Campbell does. They can do, and there's not a lot of experience out there on his particular side of the line and what they ask Campbell to do, where he not only has to hold up at the point of attack, he has to make plays, he has to draw double teams, he has to create pressure, he has to make tackles. You're not going to get that same production out of anyone. They're outside of J.J. Watt, and especially from that 3-4 defensive end position, it's really rare that you see the number of tackles that Calais gets on top of the pass rushing that he does. You've got Tommy Kelly and Frosty Rucker. Those guys are productive players, but they're getting good production out of them. The issue is, it's more of the Darnell Dockett side of things, where it's okay if you get 4 sacks and 40 tackles in a year. 4 sacks and 40 tackles for Calais' side, that's half a season, unfortunately. And so now you're left with mainly guys who play the other side. A nose tackle in Dan Williams you're going to slide over. A rookie in Kareem Martin who's not quite ready to play that position. And so it's kind of piecemealing, hoping and praying and hoping that Todd Bowles' scheme will work its magic.
Well, and I'll say this. If Todd Bowles' scheme works its magic, Cardinals fans better start brushing up on the linebackers coach and defense and secondary coach who might replace him after this year, because that will be an absolute magic show. If you can, like you said, piecemeal it together where you're not losing productivity from the run stopping. You're not going to find, I don't think at this point anyways, an answer to the pass rush question. Maybe Okafor can give you something, maybe. But yeah, I don't think you're going to find an answer to the John Abraham loss at this point.
Well, they still haven't. They hadn't thus far, and so now you've lost the pass rushing side, and you've lost the run stopping side to it as well. So it's really difficult. I can see now if you're looking at the kind of the depth of the God, you can kind of make it work with Frosty Rucker and Tommy Kelly filling in a bit for the Campbell side. Then what that's going to do, that's going to be calling a lot on rookie Ed Stinson to be able to hold up Dockett side of things. It's going to go with Dan Williams, who we did see once again playing in that nickel, in that two-man nickel line that they had. The first time we'd ever seen that in the previous game against San Francisco. But we're going to see more of that. And as Teamu still only got one snap, so clearly he isn't right yet. We might see a little... If Teamu's unable to go, you might stick Bruce Gaston in the middle and slide Dan over to the defensive end side. It's going to be interesting. And I asked Bruce at the press conference on Monday, I asked him about Kareem Martin, if they're going to keep him, working him outside, or if they're going to use him inside as well with Campbell gone. And he's going to have to... we haven't seen him, other than just a handful of snaps, play Calais' position. But he's going to have to do more than he said, because really he kind of disappeared from the defensive line rotation and kind of found a place where they put him out on the edge for their dime package, and he's playing outside. He's going to have to play two positions. That may or may not be a positive, since he hasn't shown to be particularly great at one position yet.
No, and he's been surprisingly good. I guess I can say good. He's been surprisingly good as a run stopper so far, but I think everybody was expecting just a little bit more in terms of a pass rusher, and he hasn't done anything at this point as a pass rusher. And I'm not super surprised, because I think we talked about this after the draft, post-draft. He's like a baby giraffe that was just born. he's all arms and legs, and he doesn't necessarily know how to use it yet. And he's awkward out there as a football player still. He was picked in the third round for a reason. I mean, he was a guy that you look at and you say, wow, he's got a lot of upside, but man, he's a ball of clay, and we got to mold him. And now it's like, okay, well, forget this molding thing. Go out there and play football, and don't screw up too much.
Now, I want to point something out, something that you've actually told me, and which gives me a little bit of hope in terms of not so much the defensive line, because there's some issues there, and we're going to see the type of inside linebackers we got, if in fact Larry Foote, or what we're going to see is how much of that run stopping was the line holding up, those front five holding it up, and simply Washington and Dansby cleaning up, and what happens with Foote and Minters and in Buchanan's production. But one thing about Alex Okafor is now he slides into that starting spot. Hopefully he stays healthy. He hasn't shown that he can do that yet, as he played 5 snaps a season ago. He was good during the preseason. Suddenly the thigh injury, and then it puts him out for the first 3 games. You called Alex Okafor a younger, kind of poor man's version of Matt Shaughnessy. Not terribly a bad thing, but you really haven't seen much in the pass rushing department. He's had that talked up a bit, that he has that talent to be able to get to the passer. But you spoke to his ability to play well against the run because of the size that he is. Maybe that will be the case where he can show that, and at least what Shaughnessy's strength was, maybe they don't lose that so much putting Okafor in the game.
Well, I think that's why you're not completely... I think... This week, you look at it and you say, okay, there was definitely a drop off from, when Campbell went out to whoever took over for him in the run defense. But I think you can kind of say, okay, that was because Todd had to adjust on the fly. I mean, it happened just at the beginning of the third quarter, unfortunately. So he didn't even have time at halftime to kind of break it down and everything like that. So now he's got a week. Let's see what he comes out with. Let's see what he does, and then we can judge from there. I think what everything is in terms of their ability, but I could definitely see them not losing too much in the run game. Maybe not this absurd number 2 run defense that they've been for the first, before game 4. I haven't even looked where they're ranked now, but they were number 2 coming into the game, so obviously they're not that anymore.
They're not going to be. I mean, they didn't give up 150. The passing numbers are very, very jaded, but they still didn't give them 100 yards rushing, so they're still going to be top 10. They're still going to be the top 10 right there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what you hope, and that's what that's where you hope that you don't have a fall off. Okay, you go from 2 to maybe 8, 9. I think everybody's okay with that.
Yeah.
And understands that. But it's okay. Now, now we've lost really the only sense of a pass rush that is created from this team has been from Campbell. So, who's going to create that now? And I think that's more of a question than it was previously.
Well, and I brought this up a couple times during the game. Call it an overreaction, call it what you want. I see a lot of parallels of what's happening right now as what happened in 2012. I don't mean to say that this season is going to fall apart. But I was there in the locker room. I was there in the press conferences during the first 4 games when they were winning games. There was talk of this team being special. Of that team being special and how their ability to win games late. Then things fell apart, and people point to the coaching. I've always been a Ken Wisenhunt apologist, and there's nothing you can tell me that it says Ken Wisenhunt is a bad coach. He was a victim of his own circumstances when it comes to personnel development. But injuries did him in. And it was ultimately hitching his wagon to Kevin Kolb, who couldn't stay healthy, unfortunately. 2012 fell apart with a couple of things. They were winning games when they knew they had a bad offensive line. It was through smoke and mirrors that it was working. Then they had the loss of Levi Brown. Then the quarterbacks got hurt. I don't mean to say this team's going to fall apart, because I think it's a much better coach, and I think it's a much more talented team from top to bottom. I mean, the fact that they have a better quarterback at the top helps. They got a better offensive line. They've got a better number 1 running back. They got better receivers. But when you look at this they started 3-0, and kind of the defensively, they're kind of doing it with smoke and mirrors on the pass rushing side. Is this pass rush issue going to be, and then you add the quarterback injuries on top of that, does that have the potential to snowball into this is a loss and this is a loss, and then suddenly the losses snowball? Dan Bickley had a column about this. I think it came out on Monday about that. Is this the injury with Calais and Shaughnessy? Are these the injuries? They've been talking next man up. But are these the injuries that finally cause the snowball effect? Because they can't keep playing at that high a level when they get down to the second and third string, everybody, and they lose all that veteran leadership. And just the weight and the toll it takes when you have another guy go down. They can't keep it up. Is there a point to... Should we be afraid of a 2012 type disappointment? Not necessarily losing 11 of 12 games, but the same type of effect where you go from thinking, oh my gosh, this team is special because they won in New England in 2012, and then they had the overtime win against Miami, or the last minute game in Miami. Then they lost to Buffalo. But things just kind of fell apart after that, and it was kind of like you couldn't see the flaws. You saw the flaws at the beginning, but they didn't matter because they were winning. But all of a sudden, those flaws became huge.
Right, and I think the main difference is talent. I don't think this team lacks as much talent, but if the injuries continue to pile up, I mean, you can definitely make a case that this. I mean, I don't. Oh, you can't even make a case. You can't argue that this team is less talented right now than they were game one of the season. So, I mean, you had John Abraham in game one. You had Carson Palmer in game one. You had Calais Campbell in game one. Right there, that's there's basically three guys that can be considered top half of the league at their positions, and now you don't have any of those three, and you're banking on rookies and journeymen and veterans who are kind of part-time bit players as opposed to superstars or a solid guy in Palmer. So
which comes to the point where we thought we didn't know where we were going to have, but guess what? This season hinges now on Carson Palmer. No matter what, I mean, if Carson Palmer never was able to come back from a shoulder injury, if the defense stays intact, you can win games with Drew Stanton, and like they did with Cobb at the beginning of 2012, you can be a contender. But if you don't have that defensive play in Stanton, no, you can't win games. And now that you have a drop-off defensively, this season belongs to Carson Palmer now, and that's something that maybe like, I don't know how comfortable everyone needs to be, but unless Carson Palmer's playing at a high level, we have no chance.
Yeah, and you just look at the you look at the numbers, and this offense just, I mean, it's meh at this point. And we were talking at the beginning of the season, there was talk, is Carson Palmer going to throw for 5,000 yards? Well, that's not happening. You're hoping to get to 4,000 yards as a team at this point, passing the football. Are they going to score 25 points per game? Well, I mean, they could go on a run here, but you're averaging 21 and a half a game. And, if you're starting Logan Thomas for any amount of time, you're probably going to change your scheme to be more about running the football, controlling things,
which they haven't done well.
No, and I was kind of disappointed in that from Arians. I understand you have a game plan and you go with the game plan, but in Thomas's, 9 drop back attempts, I think he threw one pass in the 0 to 10 yard range. Like, it's a rookie in Denver. Do something easy, like run a flare route to, I don't know. That's just me. That's how I am.
And what did the Cardinals? One of the things that they kind of got away with, they got away from outside of one of the drops. One of their favorite plays is the wide receiver screen. They ran if I can recall, on the top of my head, 2. One to John Brown, one to Ted Ginn that he just dropped.
Yep, and it's like, why not try and do just that? I mean, that's just how I look at things. I mean, I think you can do more with a rookie, and you're going to see a better game plan this week. And if he is starting, and you're going to see a much more ball controlled, limited offense, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's not going to be chucking the ball down the field, but I think that's what you're waiting to see at this point is, what do they have? Who are they lining up with, and where does it go from there?
Well, let's talk about the game specifically. Let's go to the good, the bad, the ugly from the game. Let's talk about the good. We've been raining on the Cardinals parade for a little bit because it seems like doom and gloom. They're still 3-1. They're still atop the NFC West. They've got a 2-game span now that's very winnable, so that's very possible they could go into that Philly game 5-1. 5-1, really? I mean, and the fact of the matter is, if we have to take, it feels like it feels like the sky is falling. But aside from the injuries, this is exactly what we expected out of the Cardinals. We expected what we hoped out of the Cardinals as a 3-1 record. It's just how it happened is the attrition that has happened. But let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly from the game. Let's talk about the good. What did the Cardinals do good from what you saw? What was the good out of that game?
I think you're you're still happy with the play of the defense in terms of the run defense. Obviously, like I said, it got a little sideways after Calais went out, but I don't think you're terribly upset with how they played. I think you are good with the special teams, which has been solid outside of Ted Ginn, who's basically, earned his money on winning the New York Giants game this year, and that's kind of what it seems like he's going to hang his hat on. And I think, and for me, I was fine with the way Deon Buchanan played in this game. I thought he played well, especially in pass coverage. I don't necessarily get the affinity. I know that they're trying to make him replace Darrell Washington in terms of that, like, elite, what's the word? Like, athletic linebacker that can come in and blitz and do things like that. But it just seems like right now he has no idea how to blitz.
No,
I feel like it's just
he's taken really bad.
Yeah.
He looks like I'll remind. Adrian Wilson is as good as they said he was at blitzing. He took really bad angles. He looks like that right now. Although I see why they're doing it, because what they lost a lot of speed sideline to sideline. Larry Foote is not a sideline to sideline player. He's a smart player. But by putting Buchanan in that spot, it allows them to do a lot of things, keep a lot of flexibility. And the truth is, when it comes to the coverage part, he's looked pretty good. He hasn't been bad. He's been good in run support recently. He's been good in coverage. The only thing he's not been good at his A-gap blitzes. He's just not getting. He's getting held up. He's not getting in there clean, and he's not getting in there quickly.
Yeah, and that's basically it for him. They need to continue to work with him on that, but everything else I've been really impressed with him in coverage. He plays a lot of zone. He's not manning up a lot of guys, but that's okay. I mean, he's a first-year safety playing linebacker and sometimes safety. So, it's okay. It's not a bad thing, and I think he's done it well so far. Those would be the positives. I think, I think you were obviously very excited about the throw that Logan Thomas made that he probably shouldn't have made, that he made, that was incredible. But outside of that, it's been, it was kind of a dumpster fire of a game. It
turned into it. It did. It just turned that way. What stood out to me is a couple of things. That the defensive play overall, despite the adversity that they had, they did pretty well against a Hall of Fame quarterback who can really shred up defenses. They held up until the injuries mounted. I loved that throw by Thomas, and initially I thought, it's probably not the throw he should have made. After talking with him, after seeing the great actual film review breakdown by Kyle Odegaard at azcardinals.com, which I as a side note, I'm really cool to see how the team side has really taken that sort of new fad of football coverage, because stuff like you do, Seth, and a lot of other sites are now doing the film review. The team side is now doing, only they get the added perspective is that they can sit down with the players and have them talk them through it. And so you get the perspective from Logan, you get it from Andre Ellington, you get from Ted Larson, who also talked about it, as that was a coverage that they wanted to see. And Andre being covered by a linebacker, you're going to try for that every single time. When he threw the ball, the linebacker wasn't looking. So it turned out what I thought, he never should have made that throw. It turned out to be a really smart play. So that was a positive. Another positive that's I can't keep getting over. I don't know if I'll get over this the whole season, but oh my gosh, how good does this Chandler Catanzaro look so far this season? There isn't a single bit of hesitation or wavering in his kicks. His kicks are true. They're strong. They're not even, they're all just dead on. That kid is a pickup. We haven't had the chance to see him in the clutch or anything, but He's hit all of his kicks. He's looked great doing it. And when a lot of other teams who went with rookie kickers are now regretting going with the rookie kickers, that kid is a find.
Yeah, and that was something you and I talked about. I was lucky enough. I have a buddy that went to Clemson, and I texted him literally the day they signed him, and it said he basically said great signing. He's automatic. He's going to be a complete stud, and I was just sold from there. So it was a great find, and he's done exactly what you had hoped he would do.
It looks like bad. Let's not quite the ugly. What was the bad from the game? If they're looking for me, obviously the bad was how Antonio Cromartie looked. I know part of that was just Peyton Manning putting the ball in perfect places, but Cromartie really got. I don't know if we call it ugly. Maybe we should put that on the ugly part. We'll put that in the ugly part. The bad is it's no pass rush. Frosty Rucker 1 sack. I mean, it kind of goes to the whole thing we've got all year. The Cardinals had 4 sacks in 4 games. Not a single sack from a linebacker. They've gotten 2 from safeties and 2 from defensive ends. I don't know what's going to change. So that continues to be a bad. The bad also for me included just the 2 plays that Bobby Massey gave up to Von Miller. It's going to happen. And then the one to Jared Beldier that when DeMarcus Ware got Logan, but that was in part on Logan for his drop was way too deep. Arian said it, Logan said it. His drop was way too deep. He should have stepped up into the pocket. He shouldn't have dropped nearly as deep as he did. So that was the bad. Another bad for me is the running game was terrible. There was nothing from the running game at all. And we're coming to the point and we're seeing, that's the concern you have. Is Andre Ellington really, and he had a great game overall. He came to play. But if he's your only option from the running back position, you really don't have a good running game because I think Arian said they counted, 16 carries of less than 2 yards. That doesn't cut it when you're not getting a 20-yarder off. And they didn't get any big runs out of Ellington at all. And as much of a really just a guy that Jonathan Dwyer was, you take away that aspect of the running game, and you're left with nothing because they apparently have zero trust in Stephon Taylor when it comes to running the football. He got the 1 carry for 6 yards. He got 4 snaps the entire game. They've completely apparently they don't have any trust in him when it comes to the running game, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens because it turns out I'm guessing is Marion Grice become the default backup then, a guy who offers some of the same shiftiness that Ellington does, but who can also provide a little bit more in terms of inside running.
Yeah, I don't know. Grice he's a nice player. We'll see. We'll see if he even starts getting on the roster. I was surprised he wasn't active, to be honest with you, since he had the bye week. I mean, he's been here since they signed him right after the 49ers game, right? Like it was the Wednesday after or something like that. It
was. I think it was the report came out of the Monday because they stole him from the Chargers who had the injuries. But it was Friday that Arian said he's not quite ready. He didn't quite have a handle on everything he needed to do.
So, it comes down to a conversation we had. I'm looking back on Saturday. You and I and Tyler Nickel and Joe Zupa had this conversation on Saturday, and I just wanted, in terms of the run game, at what point is this whole Cooper not playing thing about Arians either sticking with this, the quote unquote continuity of the offensive line, or is it that Cooper's just that bad right now? I mean, those are those not the only 2 options? I don't know. Maybe they're not. Maybe there's a third and I'm missing it. But the running game this year has been really, as you said, not good. And, you and I had the conversation earlier in the year before the season started that I wasn't totally sold on the idea of Ellington being the every down back, not because he's not a very good back, but because he's more of a 1 yard, 2 yard, 15-yard type of runner, not a guy that's going to get 4 to 5 yards a carry every carry, but he's a guy that's going to get that 4.5 to 5 yard a carry average by having big plays of 20 plus yards multiple times in a season. So I think we're kind of seeing that, but what we're not seeing is any big plays. So I don't think we should be completely surprised by it, but then it does beg the question, what is going on the offensive line? Fanaiko was awful. I graded him the lowest in my offensive line grades.
And he was clearly hampered by his knee. He wasn't moving as well as he had in previous weeks.
Right, and then it again goes back to it.
Why don't they use Cooper?
That down on Cooper, that a guy basically on one leg is a better option. That was just odd to me. That was definitely bad. I think the other thing that was bad, and I said this during the game and right after the game, the bad of the secondary isn't going to happen every week, because what you went up against this week was, and you said it, a Hall of Fame quarterback, 3 wide receivers who are equal to, if not better than, their counterparts on defense, which the Cardinals haven't faced yet this year. I mean, let's be honest. They had the game where they faced Keenan Allen and Antonio Gates, and they ran wild, and but they were able to shut down everybody else in the run game. Larry Donnell and Victor Cruz got loose, but they shut down everybody else. And last week, or not last week, but last game before the Broncos game, for whatever reason,
Stevie Johnson
decided they were going to throw the ball around and try to be like the greatest show on turf and not run the ball at all, and ended up helping out the Cardinals. And Stevie Johnson got off, but nobody else did. So it was, it's kind of worked out. And now this week they went up against multiple guys that are very good. You Wes Welker, Emmanuel Sanders is a very good wide receiver. Obviously, Demaryius Thomas is phenomenal, and Julius Thomas is really good. So it kind of just happened this week that the fact that which will be in the ugly, that you can't generate a pass rush to save your life, you're going to hang your defensive backs out to dry, and we just saw it this game.
And not every quarterback's going to make every throw look as good as he did, and that's what happened. There is that because there was no pass rush, and because Demaryius Thomas was able to get just a little bit of separation from Antonio Cromartie, the fact that we saw the other quarter there, Cromartie got beat a few times, Patrick Peterson got beat other games, but the quarterbacks missed the throw. Manning doesn't.
Right, and that was something I said during the game. You look at that game, and holy cow, he wasn't under any pressure at all, and we didn't see the missed opportunities that we saw in previous games. I mean, Phillip Rivers missed a throw to
was it Eddie
Keenan Allen?
Was it?
No,
it was Malcolm Floyd. Malcolm Floyd.
Yeah. Oh, Malcolm Floyd. There you go. Obviously, game one, wide open. I mean, Cromartie was beat. I thought Cromartie was in better position on the touchdown catch Demaryius Thomas had than he was when he got beat by Floyd.
Yeah, on that
throw, one of those things like that.
That throw on the big touchdown play. If Manning puts that anywhere but any shorter, Cromartie can make a play on that ball. And with the position that he had.
And Cromartie dropped another interception. I believe it was in the end zone. I don't know if they ended up scoring or kicking a field goal, but I think he dropped another interception too. So it was just a bad game. You chalk it up to that. It was, so it ends up in the bad pile as opposed to everything else. And I put the offensive line in there because they weren't terrible. Arian said it really well. They shut down Miller and Ware for 59 or 56 out of 59 snaps, and then they got beat in 3. But those 3 are what matter,
and those 3 is like that's what they go to the Pro Bowl and you stink, is the quote he said.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's and that's kind of what happens. I mean, that's why DeMarcus Ware is going to be a Hall of Famer, and that's why Von Miller's been one of the best pass rushers in the game since he came into the league.
Let's talk about a little bit. So the last couple of topics we got, talk about Logan Thomas, a quarterback. Obviously, we talked about the throw that he made. He went 1 of 8, 1 of 8 for the 81 yards and the touchdown. So he got that one perfect throw. Then he was all over the place. He got sacked twice. He had some jitters, but he kind of demonstrated what we all see in Logan Thomas. You've got part where no one else can make that throw, the throw that he did, tightest of windows, zips it right in there, touchdown. And then the other ones were, whoa, what? And an observation I've made since training camp, it's kind of interesting because we saw, even just during practices, the smaller the window of Thomas, when it comes to zipping the ball into a small window, he is fantastic at that. He has an ability that even the most elite quarterbacks sometimes don't have, to be able to put the ball in just the right spot. It's when there's tight coverage and it's moving, but when it's wide open, when he has to loft it to a spot in particular, when it's a comeback route, he tends to be much more erratic on those throws. But on slants over the middle or seam routes or they're on a wheel route, a go route on the sideline, when he's got a particular window, spot to get it where he can just gun it right in there, wow, he does it as good as anybody in the game. It's that other stuff. It's that other stuff. And I mean, what did you see out of Logan other than the what everyone else saw?
Well, you had obviously the throw that everybody loves. You had 2 drop passes, which is just completely frustrating.
Oh, the drop passes, ugly. But go on.
Yeah, but I think I don't know. Maybe I'm too critical of Floyd and Fitz, but I think Fitz didn't recognize a hot route, it looked like to me. Maybe Logan threw it too early. And then Floyd, I felt like he didn't do his best to get his feet down on that sidelines throw, kind of the last throw of the game. But again, the play calling I thought was odd. He was sacked twice. The one was he set up too deep, but why are you running a 7-step drop play action pass for his first pass? That didn't make any sense to me. The second sack was clearly on him. I mean, you have got to get rid of the ball. That's one of the things he's got to learn is, it's not college. You can't shake off guys because you're bigger or stronger or faster. These guys are going to get you down. But yeah, 2 drop passes, 2 miscommunications, it looked like to me. And, it wasn't a dumpster fire, but it was definitely, I wonder aloud why there wasn't more quick throws, quick slants. When he had all that success in the first game of the preseason, it was because he was running a lot of plays with one read and throw the ball. They were doing a lot of outs. They were doing a lot of slants. They were doing a lot of stuff that was quick where when he hit his back foot on that third step or that 5th step, he knew where the ball was going and he was throwing it. And it seemed like in this game it was, okay, well, Drew's out, but we're just going to keep running the same plays that we would run if Drew was in. And to me, that was a mistake.
And looking ahead to Washington, it looks like Palmer might be able to play, but let's say he can't, and we're stuck with Logan Thomas starting at quarterback with a banged-up defense against a 1-4 Redskins team. How worried are you? I'm worried. Aside the fact, Washington's got a pretty good defense. Arizona's hasn't been getting any sort of running game at all, and now you're going to add on top of that the rookie, who is erratic. I don't know if you definitely can. If they will be lucky to get a win this weekend if Thomas is starting at quarterback and the defense looks the way it is. I don't know about you. Would you say the same thing? I think they will be lucky to come away with a win, and which should be very thank the football gods in heaven that if they can.
I'm not as negative as you for once, but that's also because I think they have, again, if they game plan this correctly, it's not as big of a deal. But you know what? If they're going to try to take these deep shots, one of my buddies, Justice Mosqueda, tweeted me, the Cardinals are like double every other NFL team in yards traveled in the air for passes thrown. So like the ball in the air, the Cardinals are like double the average of everybody else. How deep their passes are. You can't do that with a rookie, especially a fourth round rookie whose struggles are downfield accuracy and getting the ball out on time. So shorten it up, take some deep shots later in the game, but shorten it up. Lean on your running game. You know what? If Grice isn't getting it, then I like the guy. I want him to do well. But if you're going to have to go with Logan Thomas for any extended period of time and Grice isn't getting it, then cut him and find somebody that can get it. I know it's easier said than done, but you have to lean on the running game and protect your quarterback. You have to game plan this like you're the 2012 Seahawks. Give this a Russell Wilson type game plan and let him, move him around in the pocket, let him use his athleticism, his ability to extend plays, and his ability to throw the ball down the field on the move as opposed to from the pocket, and go from there. And I think you'll see some success.
At this point, let's close the show on this thought. Does it come down to whether or not, let's say Carson Palmer comes back. If Carson Palmer comes back, is all well? Are we back to, okay, we can handle this? Or do we need to change our expectations? I mean, despite the 3-1 start, if Palmer misses any more time, do we need to take a step back and go, maybe this isn't the year. Maybe it's just too much. But if Palmer comes back, I mean, do we say, we still got it? And do we have that much trust in Carson Palmer? Because he really hasn't shown that throughout his career. Really, it's been 10 years since you could say, hey, we're going to put this team squarely on Carson Palmer's shoulders. Can we do that? Can we do that?
I don't know if you can, but I think you have to at this point. I think realistically you're going to look at it and you're going to say, okay, let's see what you got, Palmer, if you're healthy and you can come back. And that's going to be the totality of your season. I think you and I were in agreement that Stanton was fine. They could have probably made the playoffs with a healthy defense and it continued. I don't want to say growth, but continued playing well in your defense. But now you're down Calais Campbell, you're down Matt Shaughnessy. You still haven't really found a pass rusher, and so it's, now you need an offense that can perform at a high level, that can win you games, and then hope that, Shaughnessy and Calais come back and you're ready to go.
So there you have it, Arizona Cardinals fans, Revenge of the Birds Radio. The sky is falling right now, but if Carson Palmer comes back, probably not falling. And maybe we can put off talking about the sky falling another day. For now, the Arizona Cardinals are looking like a group of guys that needs to regroup. Hopefully they regroup this weekend. Hopefully, in terms of radio shows, we're going to close the show now. Thank you for listening. You can find us at RevengeTheBirds.com. Please join us on that website out there. Check out the content there as always. You'll find stuff from Seth. You'll find stuff from me and from another bunch of talented writers and the best group of Arizona Cardinals fan on the web. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook. You know how to find us. That's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. We'll be back. Hopefully I will have a guest from Hogs Haven, the SB Nation Washington Redskins blog. I will be able to get a show put together with one of those guys later this week. If not, we'll be watching the game on Sunday against the Redskins, and we will be back again next week for our review show. Thanks, Seth.
Have a good night, Jess.
All right. Have a good night, Arizona Cardinals fans.
You've been listening to Revenge of the Birds. Keep the conversation going by visiting RevengeOfTheBirds.com. Follow us on Twitter at Revenge of Birds. You can also find us on iTunes at Facebook.com/RevengeOfTheBirds.